He stood in the center of the circle as the wind died down. At the sand-swept crossroads of dead roads, darkness suddenly gained density. This was the end. Amidst the deafening howl of the sandstorm, a swirling bluish-gray mist erupted from the earth. Within its depths, the colossal, mind-crushing figure of a Marid slowly took shape. With a trembling voice, the summoner uttered his cherished wish. But no sooner had the echo of the last words faded than a chilling realization struck. The phrasing was fatally, irrevocably flawed. The recording cuts off with a desperate scream. Forget everything you've read in fairy tales. The true nature of ancient contracts with Djinn is an utterly impenetrable nightmare. Chapter 1. The Grimoire, Form and Power. If we open the yellowed pages of ancient Arabic manuscripts, the true visage of the Marids will make our blood run cold. The ancient grimoire Shams al-Ma'arif leaves chilling warnings about this highest caste. They are not subservient slaves, but ruthless, primordial spirits of scorching fire. In the complex occult hierarchy of the Djinn, Marids occupy the absolute pinnacle, reigning supreme over lesser entities. Their colossal power is matched only by their exorbitant, ancient pride. They despise humankind, viewing us as pathetic creatures of dust, unworthy of gazing upon their majesty. The physical nature of a Marid is paradoxical and hostile to our dimension. According to texts, their colossal bodies are woven from primordial smokeless flame and chilling nocturnal ether. At their approach, space distorts, and an unbearable heat strangely combines with a dead cold that penetrates to the very bones. The manifestation of this entity in the material world is always accompanied by a suffocating, bluish-gray smoke that slowly creeps along the ground. The air instantly grows heavy, and a sharp chemical scent of ozone is distinctly felt in the nose, as if before a destructive thunderstorm ready to wipe all life from the face of our earth. But the most terrifying aspect is the spirit's hypnotic, unblinking gaze. In its eyes, dark as an abyss, ancient knowledge and cruelty flicker. This gaze can, in a fraction of a second, paralyze the will of any unprepared mortal, transforming them into a silent, obedient puppet awaiting their fatal judgment. To summon such a force, a special place is required. Grimoires insist the ritual is performed only where dead, abandoned roads intersect, far from any human habitation. The noise of cities and the light of hearths repel ancient spirits, who prefer the deep, absolute isolation of long-forgotten desert lands. The crossroads here is not merely a geographical point. In occult tradition, it is a sacred rift between worlds, a place where the threads of probability intertwine into a tight knot. It is here that the boundary of reality thins so much that an otherworldly entity can physically break through into our fragile, defenseless dimension. The preparation for the fateful summoning ritual took long weeks. The summoner was obliged to observe the strictest fast, abstaining from meat and warm food. A complete, total purification of thoughts was required, for any hidden weakness or fear would instantly become a target for the ruthless mind of the incredibly powerful Marid. At midnight, a complex protective circle was drawn on the cold sand. For its creation, crushed chalk mixed with the rarest shavings of meteoric iron was used. This stellar metal, fallen from the heavens, was considered the only reliable barrier capable of holding the Djinn's ethereal body beyond the drawn boundary. Then, coals were lit in copper braziers, and rare, intoxicating incenses were cast into them. The sweet smoke of aloe and the pungent aroma of coriander rose to the black sky. These specific scents served as an occult beacon, piercing the fabric of worlds and drawing the entity's greedy attention to the ritual site. The most intense phase began, the chanting of long, monotonous incantations in the dead, ancient Aramaic language. The mage required ideal, impeccable phonetic precision. Every vowel, every guttural rasp had to sound in strict accordance with the ancient canon, to resonate with invisible energy flows. The slightest, barely perceptible stumble or incorrect intonation in pronunciation harbored a mortal threat. An error instantly distorted the sonic vibration, irrevocably destroying the circle's delicate protective barrier. And then the summoner was left utterly defenseless before the enraged fire demon of the desert, unleashed from the void. At the moment of the fateful transition, the surrounding world seemed to freeze. The air temperature around the crossroads dropped sharply, unnaturally, turning breath into vapor. Suddenly, a squall of wind rose, swirling the sand into a dense local storm, reliably concealing the ritual site from any casual eyes in the night's darkness. From the roaring sand vortex, the Marid itself emerged before the circle. Its gigantic shadow loomed over the occultist. First, the spirit unleashed a wave of primal terror upon the victim, attempting to intimidate, break their will, or cunningly lure the person beyond the protective line, whispering incredibly sweet promises. Ancient texts explain Marids fiercely hate serving creatures of clay. Only the irresistible power of magical seals compels them to obey. Therefore, the vengeful mind of the Djinn always seeks the slightest loophole in a command to subtly pervert its essence and terribly punish the presumptuous mortal for their audacity. In occult tradition, a wish was never considered a gratuitous gift. It is a complex legal contract entered into with an utterly hostile, non-human mind. Every word uttered becomes a double-edged blade, where the slightest ambiguity inevitably turns against the summoner themselves, transforming a cherished dream into a sophisticated deathbed torture. The most common, truly fatal mistake of mortals is the craving for untold riches without clearly specifying their source. Blinded by greed, a person demands gold, forgetting that to an ancient spirit, human morality is an empty sound. The Marid will execute the command literally, but will choose the bloodiest and most destructive path. Let us turn to the pages of the Lesser Key of Solomon. The Grimoire warns, if you ask the spirit for treasures, it will bring them, coldly slaughtering your entire family for a rightful inheritance. The gold will indeed be at your feet, but every coin will be thoroughly soaked in the warm blood of your dearest ones. An even more terrible fate awaits one who dares to ask for immortality. The entity of smokeless flame will gladly grant it, but the summoner's body will continue to age, rot, and crumble to dust. The person will gain eternal life, trapped within a paralyzed, decaying piece of dead flesh. In this dark art, every comma, every nuance of sound uttered is important. The Djinn meticulously analyzes the phrasing, searching for hidden meanings. If there is even one, however slight, possibility of interpreting your wish to your detriment, rest assured the Marid will choose that, the most ruinous option. Ancient Arabic chronicles preserve a grim legend of a vain vizier who wished to know all the secrets of the universe. The spirit obediently carried out the command. At that very moment, billions of foreign voices, screams, and thoughts echoed in the proud man's head. The vizier went mad, drowning in the all-consuming whisper. The only reliable means of compelling such a powerful entity was considered to be the legendary copper ring with the seal of King Suleiman. This ancient artifact served not merely as protection, but as an absolute yoke for the spirits of fire. Without it, any dialogue with a Marid transformed into an act of sophisticated mortal suicide. The inner surface of this ring was covered with the finest engravings. There, the unpronounceable names of the Creator were hidden, possessing colossal vibrational power. It was this divine geometry of symbols that rigidly bound the Djinn's ethereal body, causing it unbearable pain at the slightest attempt to disobey the direct command of its cruel summoner. Suffering torment, the Marid employs all its cunning. It pleads, cries bloody tears, promises to bestow the keys to underground cities if the human only removes the ring for a second or takes one step beyond the chalk-drawn circle. This is always a deadly trap. The Djinn's main weapon is not fire, but primal illusions and sweet flattery. It unerringly finds hidden breaches in wounded human pride. The Marid projects visions of absolute power into the occultist's mind, making them believe in their own divinity to lull their vigilance before a deadly strike. The famous alchemist Albertus Magnus warned in his works, a deal with ethereal entities always has a hidden agenda. There is no free magic. For every granted wish, for every speck of otherworldly gold, the spirit invariably exacts a hidden, monstrous price, about which it will coldly remain silent. The mechanics of wish fulfillment are terrifying in their physics. A Marid does not create matter from nothing. It brutally distorts the threads of probability and weaves fates around the victim. To grant your desire, the Djinn destroys the natural order of things, creating an invisible vortex of chaos around the summoner, sucking in all living things. This monstrous distortion of reality never passes without a trace. The law of conservation of energy is inexorable. While the summoner basks in undeserved success, their loved ones begin to rapidly fade. A black streak of incurable diseases and inexplicable tragedies befalls the family. Thus, the Marid rebalances the disrupted cosmic equilibrium. At the heart of occult dealings lies the iron principle of equivalent exchange. Any magical miracle requires colossal fuel. For every day of wealth or power, a ruthless price of pure life energy is exacted. The Djinn methodically drains it from the summoner, transforming their soul into a desiccated, empty husk. But sometimes the cunning Marid does not demand the soul directly. It asks for a favor, a seemingly harmless action in the distant future. For example, to leave a certain door open on a specific night, or to hand an ancient object to a stranger. Thus, the entity weaves its global, incredibly sinister web. This deferred reckoning is the most sophisticated kind of curse. The Djinn patiently waits for many years, allowing the person to acquire a family, status, and believe in their complete safety. And then, at the moment of highest triumph and happiness, the creditor ruthlessly presents the bill, taking everything most precious forever. There is a parable of a Baghdad merchant who wished to own the finest silk caravans in the world. The Marid granted the request, bestowing incredible wealth upon him. But the next morning, the merchant awoke completely blind. He became fabulously rich, but could never again see the beauty of his silk. The phenomenon is that Marids never lie directly. Their nature does not allow them to violate the letter of a concluded agreement. However, they masterfully juggle meanings, omissions, and context. The spirit presents you with crystal clear truth, which in reality turns out to be a deadly, cunningly disguised poison. During the ritual, the spirit greedily absorbs the summoner's primal fear. The stronger the heart beats, the denser and more tangible the Djinn's ethereal form becomes. Your terror is a dark catalyst that allows the Marid to solidify its presence in our world, transforming from incorporeal smoke into monstrous flesh. Concluding the first chapter, we arrive at a terrifying conclusion. There is no ideal, safe wish. Any attempt to outwit an ancient mind is doomed to failure. A person entering into a deal with a Marid is like a blind man playing with fire on the threshold of a powder magazine, where an explosion is inevitable. Chapter 2. Abode and Traces. Where do these colossal entities hide when not bound by a contract? Ancient treatises state that the material world repels their ethereal nature, forcing them to seek refuge in the most lifeless, deadly corners of our planet, far from prying eyes, where all living things are doomed. The great desert of Rub al-Khali, whose name translates to the empty quarter, has long been considered cursed land. It is not merely an endless sea of dead sand, but the most ancient prison for rebellious fire spirits. It is here, beneath the scorching sun, that those who rejected the will of King Suleiman are buried. In the very heart of these wastes lies the legendary Iram, city of pillars. Arab mystics claim that its cyclopean basalt columns were not erected by humans. Enslaved Marids bore the heavy stone blocks on their shoulders, their dark sorcery forever permeating these forgotten ruins. The famous traveler Ibn Battuta, in his chronicles, shudderingly described crossing the deep desert. He mentioned ominous mirages distorting the horizon and disembodied voices calling travelers by name. Those who followed this otherworldly whisper vanished without a trace into the shimmering heat haze. In some areas of Arabia, researchers find eerie patches of melted sand, transformed into smooth black glass. Scientists attribute it to lightning strikes, but occultists know. These are traces of the unbearable heat emitted by a materialized Djinn when its fiery body touches the Earth's solid ground. If we carefully examine ancient Bedouin parchment maps, we will notice a frightening pattern. Cursed oases and deadly crossroads of caravan routes are marked with special symbols on them. It is there, according to legends, that the boundary of reality thins, allowing higher spirits to penetrate our fragile world. Half-ruined pagan temples, erected even before the advent of Islam, harbor particular danger. In these gloomy ruins, where bloody sacrifices were once performed, the barrier between the world of humans and the abode of the Djinn is practically erased. The air here is always heavy, and shadows live a life of their own. In the archives of the British Museum, the diary of a forgotten 19th century expedition miraculously survived. A group of adventurers set out into the Nefud sands, obsessed with the idea of finding the sealed copper jars of King Solomon. Their mangled bodies were discovered by a chance caravan, and a grimace of primal terror was frozen on their dead faces. Local nomads reluctantly share their observations, but their tales are chilling. Bedouins often see strange sand vortices appearing out of nowhere on absolutely windless, warm nights. These columns of dust move against the laws of physics, as if controlled by some unseen, malevolent intelligence. Confirming these stories are ancient amulets of tarnished silver found in the dunes. Inside such artifacts, tiny scrolls with sealed incantations in Hebrew and Aramaic are securely hidden. They were worn not for luck, but as a desperate attempt to escape the wrath of the Marids. Grimoires describe in detail the gruesome ritual of burying a vessel with a captured spirit. The lead-filled jar had to be buried precisely at the crossroads of 7 abandoned roads on a moonless night. It was believed that the chaos of intersecting paths disoriented the entity, preventing it from finding its way back. But time inexorably erodes landscapes, and secret burials become exposed. The main danger lies in the accidental release of a Marid by an incautious traveler or a greedy treasure hunter. He who breaks an ancient seal in hopes of wealth will instantly become the first victim of a demon starved for other lives. Arabic chronicles preserve a grim story of a simple shepherd who found a strange copper cylinder in a cave. Trying to open it with a knife, he damaged the engraving. At that very moment, the heavens blackened, and a monstrous sandstorm descended upon his village, wiping it from the face of the earth. Modern researchers of anomalous phenomena note a frightening detail. The historical locations of Marid appearances, described in ancient texts, clearly coincide with zones of strong geomagnetic anomalies. It seems that powerful electromagnetic surges serve as a kind of bridge through which these fiery entities break into our three-dimensional space. Knowledge of the Djinn did not remain solely in the East. Studying the chronicles of the Crusaders, we find chilling testimonies. Knights, lost in the Syrian deserts, encountered inexplicable horror. They described gigantic dark silhouettes that emerged from the night's gloom, driving sentries mad. In the secret records of the Knights Templar, these entities are referred to as storm demons. Local inhabitants reverently called them Lords of the Sands. The Templar Knights quickly realized that ordinary prayer and steel were powerless against this ancient evil, and began secretly collecting occult knowledge from conquered peoples. This is how forbidden knowledge of Marids penetrated Europe. Along with plundered gold, returning crusaders brought back captured Arabic manuscripts. These dark tomes, inscribed with intricate script, became the foundation for many European mystical orders eager to gain absolute power over the mighty spirits of the Crossroads. The hidden libraries of Toledo in Spain became the center for translating these texts. In dark dungeons, by the dim light of wax candles, European alchemists poring over the manuscripts, mesmerized. They meticulously translated the most complex grimoires into Latin, revealing the secrets of subjugating the merciless spirits of fire and incandescent ether. One of the most important sources was the Picatrix, a monumental treatise on astral magic. This sinister grimoire contained not only philosophical reflections, but also clear, terrifyingly detailed instructions for creating talismans. It was this text that taught Europeans how to bind a cosmic entity to a material object. One chapter provides a clear recipe for a trap for a higher Djinn. The mage was instructed to cast a vessel from an alloy of 7 metals, apply astrological seals, and carve the secret names of angels. The slightest inaccuracy in proportions transformed this artifact into certain agonizing death for the summoner. A special role in containing the Marids' ethereal body was assigned to lead and mercury. Lead, the heavy and dead metal of Saturn, dampened the entity's magical vibrations. Mercury, fluid and poisonous, created a mirror barrier inside the jar, preventing the spirit from seeping through the walls into our world. Traces of this ancient fear are still preserved in the architecture of old Moroccan houses. If you look closely at the weathered door frames in the Medina labyrinths, you will surely find carved hexagrams. These are not just patterns, but strict occult barriers, reliably blocking the path of unseen evil. This is why saturated blue is so prevalent in Middle Eastern culture. Bright sapphire doors and shutters are not merely an aesthetic choice, but a millennia-old ward against the evil eye and cunning Djinn. It is believed that this color mimics the clear sky, which the creatures of smokeless flame fear panically. Beyond architecture, Marids left their ruinous mark through cursed jewels. Legends say that the spirits paid for deals with stones of unearthly beauty, forged in the depths of the earth. However, these artifacts always carried a dark aura, slowly plunging their owners into severe paranoid madness. Ancient chronicles describe a famous blood-red ruby that pulsed and glowed ominously in the pitch darkness. It passed from hand to hand, driving greedy kings and emirs mad. Each new owner of the stone ended their days in torment, choking on their own avarice. In the harsh folklore of nomads, Marids appear not as compliant wish-granters, but as ruthless spirits of vengeance. Bedouins pass down blood-curdling stories from generation to generation about entities hiding in sandstorms. For them, the Djinn is embodied death, punishing the slightest violation of ancient taboos. One such taboo strictly regulates the setup of night camps in the desert. An experienced guide would never allow a fire to be made from certain types of desert shrubs. It is believed that the acrid smoke of such plants does not repel predators, but rather attracts something far more terrifying from the darkness. Ancient belief holds that the smoldering ash of tamarisk possesses a specific ethereal frequency. Its scent acts as a beacon for Marids, piercing a breach between worlds. An entity whose attention is drawn by this aroma begins to circle in the darkness, seeking an opening to claim an unwary victim. In the morning, around the cooled campfire, eerie, inexplicable tracks can be found in the sand. They belong neither to man nor beast, resembling deep imprints of colossal hooves pressed into the dunes with monstrous force. These marks are clear evidence that death passed very close during the night. Even more ominous signs of a spirit's presence are sound anomalies in the deep desert. Suddenly, amidst absolute dead silence, travelers begin to hear a low, vibrating hum, which locals call the whisper of the Djinn. This sound penetrates directly into the brain, causing fits of uncontrollable primal panic. Modern science attempts to explain this phenomenon by the effect of infrasound, born from the movement of sands. But occultists know this is the acoustic shadow of a Marid, its heavy breathing. Low-frequency vibrations destroy the protective barriers of the human psyche, transforming proud researchers into trembling creatures ready to do anything for salvation. A particular horror in Arabic folklore is evoked by dried-up wells, plunging deep into black rock. They are considered not merely sources, but direct gateways to the cursed underground palaces of the Marids. To gaze into such an abyss at night means to voluntarily invite a demon into one's soul. This is why a strict ritual arose. Before drawing water in the dark, a traveler must throw a pinch of salt into the well. It crystallizes ethereal energy, momentarily blinding the entity, giving the person a chance to safely quench their thirst without becoming prey to the Lord of the Depths. Old storytellers still whisper the tale of a woman who forgot the words of protection at a night spring. Returning to her tent, she found that her newborn infant had changed. Its skin was unnaturally cold, and its gaze held the ancient, inhuman malice of a changeling ifrit. The concept of changelings in Arabic tradition is rigidly tied to the dark magic of wishes. Marids take human children, not out of blind cruelty, but to raise ideal vessels for their incarnations. In return, they leave ethereal copies, mercilessly draining the life force from grief-stricken parents. Despite these chilling horrors, secret cults existed in the Middle East for centuries. Madmen voluntarily sought encounters with Marids, worshipping them as dark deities. They hoped to forge an ultimate contract, gain boundless power over the world, and grind their enemies into bloody dust. Archaeologists exploring the hidden gorges of Petra found strange remains of altars carved into the rocks. Their placement and specific drains for liquids leave no doubt. Here, under the cover of starless nights, grim rituals of blood sacrifice were performed, intended to nourish the fiery giants slumbering in the darkness. The study of grimoires reveals a terrifying link between fresh blood and a Marid's ability to materialize. To achieve a dense physical form, the spirit requires a colossal release of life energy. It is spilled blood that serves as the dreadful catalyst, reliably stitching together the torn fabric of two incompatible realities. This is why classical texts strictly forbid mages from spilling even a drop of their own blood inside the protective circle. If this happens, the barrier will instantly collapse. The Marid will absorb this power, gain physical might, and tear the unfortunate summoner to pieces before they can utter their wish. Concluding the second chapter of our investigation, we must acknowledge a terrible truth.
The great desert securely guards its secrets beneath many meters of scorching sand. And those ancient forces that once erected the columns of cursed cities still await their hour, listening to the footsteps on the surface.
Chapter 3. Comparative Analysis. Beginning the third chapter, we leave the scorching sands of the East to trace a frightening pattern. The concept of a fateful deal at an abandoned crossroads is not an exclusively Arabic phenomenon. This grim motif permeates the occult traditions of vastly different cultures, separated by oceans. If we carefully compare the Arabic Marid and the European crossroads demon from medieval legends, we discover a chilling similarity. Both entities demand solitude, appear in clouds of black smoke, and offer the fulfillment of the most cherished desires for an exorbitantly high, hidden price. The famous Faustian bargain, described in European treatises, strikingly resembles an ancient contract with a fiery djinn in its mechanics. In both cases, we see a strict legal agreement where a person, blinded by pride, attempts to outwit ancient evil, but inevitably falls into a trap. The classical Mephistopheles acts exactly like the higher Marid from the treatise Shams al-Ma'arif. He does not lie directly, but masterfully distorts the very essence of human desires. Every blessing he bestows turns into a sophisticated curse, slowly draining the life force from the naive summoner. Comparing Arabic grimoires with European black books of shadows, researchers find frightening coincidences in summoning rituals. The same requirements for lunar phases, the same metals for protective amulets, and the same panicked fear of what will step out of the darkness. In Slavic mythology, the crossroads is also considered a cursed place where the boundary between worlds thins. It is the favorite abode of devils and restless souls. It was here, at the intersection of dusty roads, that Slavic sorcerers sought encounters with dark forces to gain forbidden knowledge or wealth. Ancient Slavic belichki, folktales, describe in detail the rituals of selling one's soul at a night crossroads. At the dead of midnight, standing within a drawn circle, a person had to renounce the light and summon the unclean one. As with the Marid, the slightest error in words cost a life. Remarkably, Slavic protection completely duplicates the Arabic tradition. A continuous circle on the ground, the use of enchanted iron, and a strict prohibition against leaving the sanctuary until dawn. Be it a demon or a sand djinn, the entity will circle, attempting to lure the victim with sweet words. The motif of cruel deception is universal. In Russian legends, the devil often generously bestows golden coins upon the petitioner, which, with the first rays of the sun, turn into dry birch leaves or clay shards. The Marid acts more subtly, but the outcome is always the same. The illusion of wealth quickly dissipates. A universal signal for the end of the dark force's time in all cultures is the crow of a rooster. It tears through the nocturnal ether, forcing both the Slavic demon and the Arabic Marid to retreat with a furious roar back into the darkness, leaving the summoner trembling in a cold sweat within the circle that saved them. Even in Celtic mythology, we find echoes of this ancient fear. Leprechauns, despite their modern comical image, were originally dark and cunning spirits. Their gifts and granted wishes always held a catch, cruelly punishing greedy mortals for their exorbitant avarice. The legendary pot of gold at the end of the rainbow strikingly resembles the cursed treasures guarded by Djinn in sand-swept ruins. This wealth can only be obtained through deceit, but holding on to it is virtually impossible. It will bring its owner only tears, madness, and swift demise. If we dig deeper, Marids are strikingly similar to ancient demons, powerful but unpredictable spirits who acted as intermediaries between gods and humans. They were neither good nor evil.
Their terrifying nature lay in the literal, compassionless fulfillment of human requests. A classic example of such a curse is the Greek myth of King Midas. His wish to turn everything to gold is a typical contract that a Marid might make. The gods granted the request precisely, transforming the greedy ruler's greatest dream into his most terrifying nightmare. Midas's golden touch, which prevented him from eating or drinking, perfectly reflects the twisted logic of Middle Eastern Djinn. The entity gives you exactly what you asked for, but does so in a way that the gift inevitably leads to your agonizing death. Unlike the Roman Lars and Penates, who guarded the hearth, phonic spirits of the Crossroads always demanded blood and sacrifices. They came from the dark depths of the underworld, bringing with them a chilling cold and the scent of decay, so similar to the suffocating ozone of the Marids. In ancient magic, the terrifying goddess Hecate was the mistress of crossroads and dark sorcery. Ancient Greeks offered her black puppies on moonless nights, hoping to gain power over shadows. Her rituals are frighteningly resonant with Arabic practices for summoning the higher fire spirits of the desert. Hecate's famous keys, which unlock the gates between the worlds of the living and the dead, perform the same occult function as the copper seals of King Suleiman. These are powerful artifacts that allow the summoner to briefly lift the veil and unleash transcendent, devastating power into our world. Another eerie detail uniting these cults is the appearance of black dogs. In European folklore, a huge black dog heralds the devil's appearance at the crossroads. In Arabic grimoires, Marids and Ifrits often take the form of enormous black hounds with eyes glowing in the darkness. Finally, the motif of invisibility. Spirits often grant the summoner the ability to hide from prying eyes. But both the Ring of Gyges from Greek myths and talismans from dark Arabic treatises exact a terrible price for this. He who lingers too long in darkness forever loses their human nature. If we compare the legendary Ring of Gyges with magical rings from ancient Arabic treatises, we discover a frightening similarity. These artifacts do not merely grant invisibility, they slowly dissolve the very essence of a person. The owner increasingly thins out, becoming an obedient shadow, forever bound to the dark giver. Let's turn to the cold fjords. Scandinavian dwarves, dvergar, living in the darkness of underground realms, also forged powerful artifacts harboring deadly curses. Like the spirits of the desert, these masters wove malevolent will into gold, ensuring that the acquired treasure would bring its owner nothing but madness. The sinister ring Andvarinat, which doomed everyone who wore it, operates by the same occult laws as treasures enchanted by Marids. These are not gifts, but sophisticated traps. Ancient magic demands balance. For the gleam of cursed gold, a mortal surrenders their future and chokes on blood. The only chance to survive an encounter with a chthonic entity has always been verbal duels. The hero saves their existence by engaging the spirit in a sophisticated intellectual struggle. This is not merely a fairy tale motif, but a reflection of strict magical laws that rigidly bind even the most powerful Marids. Ancient texts state that a Djinn is obligated to fulfill a command. If the summoner formulates a deliberately impossible task, the contract fails. By forcing the spirit to count grains of sand in the desert or empty the sea with a sieve, the wise created an endless loop. The entity fell into the trap of its own nature, losing power. In Slavic Belichki, we encounter a strikingly similar motif. To escape the devil, he is tasked with weaving a rope from river sand. This ritual directly echoes the magic of the deserts. Sand, a symbol of time and decay, binds the dark force, preventing it from completing what it started. Why do colossal entities, woven from smokeless fire, obey these rules at all?
Grimoires assert that Marids are bound by the fundamental laws of creation. Their power is limitless, but it is confined within the rigid frameworks of contracts. By breaking an oath, a spirit risks being erased from reality, losing its immortality.
The main key to control always remains the concept of the true name. In any occult tradition, knowing the true name of an entity grants absolute power over it. Spoken aloud, it acts like an invisible lasso, forcing the spirit to obey the summoner's will without question.
But discovering a Marid's true name is almost impossible. These ancient spirits conceal their genuine nature behind dozens of false nicknames and titles. Texts warn that the search for the coveted word can take an entire lifetime, and the slightest error will lead to immediate and agonizing death. There is also a reverse, far more terrible threat. During a verbal duel at the Crossroads, an inexperienced summoner might accidentally reveal their own secret name. If this happens, the roles will instantly reverse. The Marid will gain complete power over the human, transforming them into an obedient slave. To understand the price of error, one must study the concept of the soul. Life force, or nafs in Arabic tradition, represents the finest substance. It is strikingly similar to the ethereal body. It is this, like warm blood, that the Marid drains, gaining ever greater material power in our world. The theft of a soul never happens instantly. The Marid constructs an artfully woven trap around the victim from their own desires. With each granted whim, the ring of probabilities tightens. The person surrenders their will piecemeal, finding themselves trapped in a personal hell. The famous tale of the fisherman and the Djinn from 1001 Nights is not a children's story at all. Researchers of ancient grimoires see in it an encrypted occult text. It is a clear instruction for survival, where every word of the fisherman carries a hidden magical protection. The fisherman's cunning, doubting that the gigantic Marid could fit into the vessel, represents an allegory of exorcism. Playing on the spirit's pride, the mortal forces it to compress its colossal body. As soon as the black smoke is drawn back in, the trap snaps shut, and chaos is securely sealed. The copper jar itself, sealed with a heavy lead lid bearing the imprint of Solomon's seal, is an ideal occult insulator. Copper directs ethereal currents, while lead symbolizes absolute restriction. It is this barrier that can reliably contain the raging fury of a creature woven from infernal flame. This Middle Eastern practice strikingly resembles English witch bottles. In Europe, sorcerers also used sealed vessels to capture and contain dark spirits. In both traditions, the confined space becomes an eternal prison for an entity that dared to impose its destructive presence upon our world. But why do most deals involve exactly 3 wishes? The number 3 carries the deepest sacred meaning in all magical schools. It symbolizes a completed cycle, beginning, middle, and end. In the context of an occult contract, this trinity transforms into an ideal mechanism for the enslavement of the soul. At the night crossroads, where worlds intersect, 3 wishes act like 3 nails hammered into a coffin lid. 1 wish would leave a chance for salvation, 2 would arouse suspicion, but it is precisely 3 attempts that give the mortal the illusion of control. The person believes they can fix everything. The first wish is always a sweet bait. It is flawlessly granted. The second turns into a cruel trap, distorting reality. In a panic, the summoner spends the third, trying to undo everything. It is this one that delivers the fatal blow, finally surrendering the soul to the Marid's power, completing this dark ritual. William W. Jacobs' story, The Monkey's Paw, serves as a perfect illustration of this grim mechanism. An ancient talisman, brought from India, grants exactly 3 wishes,
but does so with such chilling perversity that the acquired boon becomes a curse. This story brilliantly conveys the essence of fatal contracts with Djinn. The mechanism of the cursed paw frighteningly accurately replicates the modus operandi of ancient Marids. You ask for 200 pounds sterling? You will receive them to the last penny, but as compensation for the agonizing death of your only child in a factory. This is a classic taunt of a higher Djinn. When grief-stricken parents demand their son be resurrected, the entity grants this too. But it is not a living boy who knocks at the door, but a mechanically mangled, rotting corpse. This twisted logic is absolutely identical to Middle Eastern treatises. A Marid always fulfills the letter of the command, destroying its spirit. At the heart of these curses lies a fundamental law. Fate is a tightly woven thread. Attempting to sever it through occult means and forcibly impose one's will inevitably causes a monstrous backlash. The magic of Crossroads does not create good from nothing. It merely cruelly redistributes suffering. The central theme of all legends about deals with infernal forces is the inevitable punishment for human pride. A mortal naively believes that their pathetic intellect can outwit an immortal mind woven from primordial fire. It is this presumption that becomes the spirit's main weapon. To avoid the entity's hypnotic gaze, occultists of both traditions turned to the magic of reflections. Grimoires strictly instruct the summoner not to look into the swirling mist beyond the circle's boundary, but into a specially prepared smooth surface. A mirror serves as a kind of shield between fragile sanity and primal terror. Arabic mages used heavy copper mirrors for these purposes, polished to a perfect shine and inscribed with protective surahs. Copper, dedicated to Venus, softened the destructive Martian fury of the fire spirit. Only by gazing into the dim reflection could the summoner safely observe the materialization of the colossal Marid. However, the most ancient legends state that a true Marid has no reflection in the conventional sense at all. Its nature is so alien to our material world that in the copper surface, the summoner sees only a mass of black flame or a gaping void, greedily devouring any falling light. This chilling belief strikingly echoes European myths about vampires and demons, also lacking reflections. The absence of a visual trace in a mirror has always been considered an infallible marker of a being devoid of a human soul and belonging to the dark legions lurking beyond the edge of our perception. Another frightening parallel is the sharp odor accompanying the breach of world boundaries. Both European demonologists and Arab mystics unanimously describe the suffocating stench of burning sulfur mixed with the electric scent of ozone. This is the physical trace of the colossal tension tearing the fabric of reality at the moment of summoning. All these coincidences prove one thing. Beneath the veneer of different cultural traditions lies a single primal root of human fear. The Crossroads demon and the ancient Marid are merely different masks of the same incomprehensible force, awaiting us for centuries in the darkness of night roads. Chapter 4. The Evolution of Fear. With the relentless passage of time and the development of civilization, the true visage of the Marid began to fade from collective memory. The ancient terror that compelled travelers to avoid abandoned crossroads gradually transformed, evolving from a deadly threat into an exotic element of increasingly popular Western literature. The turning point came in the early 18th century, when Antoine Galland introduced his translation of 1001 Nights to Europe. This book caused a sensation in Parisian salons, but the price of this success was high. The original texts underwent severe censorship and deliberate distortion. Adapting the tales for the pampered European courts, translators mercilessly expunged all frightening occult details. The ancient Djinn lost their infernal nature and the smell of sulfur. The formidable desert spirits, who demanded bloody sacrifices and absolute obedience, were transformed into obedient servants from children's books. It was then that this absurd image was born, forever entrenched in pop culture. The great Marid, composed of smokeless flame and nightmare, transformed into a comical conjurer in silk pantaloons and a colorful turban, ready to fulfill the whims of any fool who rubbed an old copper lamp. Thus, the original occult meaning of the deal was hopelessly lost. The strict summoning ritual at the Crossroads, requiring protection from meteoric iron and knowledge of secret names, shrank to a mundane fairy tale. The true nature of the contract, where every word could cost a soul, was forgotten. The Victorian era only exacerbated this substitution. The widespread fascination with the East led to a total romanticization of its mystical traditions. Arabic grimoires became fashionable library decorations, and complex magical seals were thoughtlessly copied onto cheap amulets. But behind this facade lay the same abyss. With the rise of spiritualism, presumptuous mediums in smoky London drawing rooms began to conduct seances with desert spirits. They used Ouija boards and trance states, naively believing they could control ancient entities as easily as they summoned the phantoms of their deceased relatives. The outcome of such experiments was often monstrous. Secret archives hold dozens of testimonies about the tragic fates of 19th century occultists who attempted to recreate Solomon's rituals. Many researchers ended their days in psychiatric asylums, constantly muttering about gigantic shadows squeezing their throats with icy fingers. The most famous example was the renowned mystic Aleister Crowley. In the early 20th century, he journeyed to the scorching Algerian desert to perform a complex Enochian summoning ritual. Drawing a magic circle directly on the sand, he opened a gateway for an entity known as the demon Choronzon. According to his assistant's records, the unleashed spirit Choronzon displayed all the characteristics of a classic maddened Marid. It masterfully imitated voices, wove complex illusions, and physically attacked the protective barrier, attempting to bury the circle in sand. This gruesome battle proved the ancient lords of the desert still thirst for human blood. Only in the 20th century did horror literature make a blood-curdling return to primal fear. Writers intuitively grasped that dark thread stretching from the decayed pages of Arabic grimoires, revealing the true, terrifying nature of the fulfillment of cherished human desires. Howard Phillips Lovecraft became the main conduit of this chthonic horror. It was he who created the terrifying image of the mad Arab Abdul al-Hazred, who wandered the lifeless sands of the Rub al-Khali, listening to the otherworldly whispers of invisible creatures lurking in the darkness of bygone centuries. If we look closely at Lovecraft's grim pantheon of cosmic deities, we will clearly see the distorted features of those very destructive Marids. These are colossal entities, incomprehensible to the human mind, whose presence drives one mad, and any contact results in the total collapse of sanity. Late 20th century cinema unexpectedly revived this forgotten trope of the evil spirit. Directors cast aside the fairy tale tinsel, revealing the ruthless occult essence. The Djinn once again appeared as a cruel executioner, mercilessly punishing mortals for their own greed and exorbitant pride. The cult film Wishmaster became a terrifyingly accurate illustration of the cunning of ancient Marids. In it, every uttered word is interpreted with twisted literalness, transforming a cherished dream into a bloody nightmare. This is a detailed cinematic adaptation of the strict warnings hidden in the Lesser Key of Solomon. Unwittingly, mass culture unconsciously returned to the original warnings of medieval grimoires. Screenwriters, as if tapping into a dark ether,
brought to light the primal terror of the inevitable reckoning for a daring violation of the fundamental laws of creation. Behind this lies the deepest psychological aspect of the ancient myth, the panicked fear of one's own hidden desires. Humanity fears looking inward, realizing that behind the mask of decency lurk dark, insatiable impulses, waiting for a chance to break free. This is why ancient texts tirelessly assert, a Marid does not bring evil from without, it merely mercilessly exposes the dark essence of the summoner themselves. The desert demon acts as a catalyst, unleashing the poison that has long been corrupting the heart of the foolish mortal who asks. The powerful Djinn is a distorted mirror, flawlessly reflecting human greed, hidden envy, and an insatiable thirst for absolute power. It gives exactly what is asked of it, but takes everything that made a human truly a living being. Today, this ancient fear has not vanished. It has merely changed its scenery. Modern urban legends effortlessly transplanted the dusty crossroads of deserts into the neon-drenched labyrinths of megacities, where deals with the otherworldly are struck beneath the monotonous hum of night highways. Recall the famous American stories of blues musicians who sold their souls to the devil at the desolate crossroads of Highways 61 and 49. They asked for unprecedented talent, but in return received only a brief flash of fame and a swift, mysterious death. These grim American myths strikingly accurately replicate the most ancient Middle Eastern summoning traditions. The same desolate rift of roads, the same nighttime, the same fateful deal with a powerful entity that always takes immeasurably more than it gives. The copper jar with Suleiman's seal has long transformed into mysterious puzzle boxes or cursed objects bought in the depths of the darknet. The form of the vessel has changed, but its gruesome contents still await an incautious touch to burst forth into our fragile material world. If you carefully study internet creepypastas about wish-granting rituals in abandoned buildings, you will find a frightening similarity to the texts of Picatrix. Teenagers, lighting candles in empty rooms, unconsciously repeat steps from millennia ago, summoning the very same ancient evil. All key elements of the occult contract are impeccably preserved: precise nighttime, strictly enclosed space, and a clear verbal formula. Even without understanding the meaning of their actions, modern seekers of wonders activate the very same deadly mechanism of reality distortion. A chilling question arises. Why does humanity stubbornly continue to seek ways to make this dark deal, despite thousands of years of bloody warnings? The answer lies in our boundless pride and blind belief that we, ourselves, can outwit death itself. This is the most dangerous illusion of complete control. Modern man, armed with technology, naively believes that he is far smarter than ancient mages. He is firmly convinced that he can draw up a perfect legal contract in which the cunning fire spirit will not find a single loophole. Let's examine typical modern wishes. If you were to demand absolute health from a Marid, this ancient demon, devoid of pity, could easily plunge you into a deep coma, where your body would forever remain untouched by disease and aging. And if you passionately crave worldwide fame in the age of the internet, the Marid will gladly grant this too, transforming your face into the symbol of the most horrific crime of the century. You will gain total recognition, but forever lose your life and freedom. Ask for infinite wealth, and the chthonic spirit will simply collapse the global economy. It will devalue all currencies to ashes, making you the owner of mountains of useless paper amidst burning chaos. Every careless word you utter will turn into a global catastrophe and the demise of millions. It is important to remember
The scale of a Marids' monstrous power is absolutely not limited by the pathetic confines of human understanding. This spirit, woven from primordial fire, thinks in terms of eternity. For it, wiping an entire city off the face of the earth for the fulfillment of your whim is merely a light breath of scorching wind. In the subterranean secret archives of the Vatican, blackened Arabic manuscripts, bound with lead seals, are still preserved, which the Church strictly forbids translating. It is believed that within their pages are hidden the true names of higher Djinn and summoning formulas capable of tearing the fabric of our fragile world. Among occult researchers, rumors persistently circulate that the most terrible global catastrophes of the last century were not accidental at all. It is said that these are the direct consequences of monstrously failed deals when someone powerful tried to subjugate a Marid but did not account for the cunning price of wishes. If we carefully study historical chronicles, we will notice a frightening pattern. Every time there was a sharp surge of interest in dark occultism and forbidden grimoires in Europe or the Middle East, it was inevitably followed by a global crisis, claiming millions of innocent lives. It is quite possible that closed secret societies still use this ancient knowledge for their grim purposes. Behind the thick doors of elite clubs, they are still attempting to forge the perfect contract with the Lords of the Sands, hoping to circumvent the centuries-old curse and seize absolute power. But today, a far more terrifying threat has emerged. The thoughtless digitization of ancient grimoires has made complex rituals accessible to unprepared masses. Texts that were once whispered only to the chosen few are now openly available, like a loaded weapon dropped in the middle of a bustling playground. Experienced occultists sound the alarm and strictly warn, reading genuine incantations aloud, even from the cold screen of a monitor, is mortally dangerous. By uttering ancient phonemes, you unconsciously activate dormant forces, and the entities care not whether you read from yellowed parchment or a smartphone. The entire mechanics of summoning lie in specific sonic vibrations. Ancient words in forgotten tongues resonate at a certain frequency that literally punches microscopic breaches in our reality. Through these cracks, Marids sense your presence, like sharks scenting fresh blood in dark waters. Recently, a gruesome story surfaced on occult forums about teenagers who, for a joke, ran distorted Arabic mantras through a sound application. They accidentally hit upon the correct summoning tonality, and that very night, their home filled with the suffocating smell of ozone and chilling primal terror. To ancient Marids, the method or instrument of summoning is utterly irrelevant. If the basic conditions of the contract are met, precise time, enclosed space, and the correct verbal formula, the deal is considered open. Unbeknownst to yourself, you are staking your soul in this dark game. Moreover, every unspoken selfish impulse, every flicker of dark envy or greed, invisibly feeds these entities. They are like parasites that grow and strengthen, consuming the dark energy of our hidden desires, awaiting the very moment you are ready to utter a request. This is precisely why the rapid growth of modern consumer society has led to an unprecedented increase in the influence of wish-granting spirits. The more humanity craves material possessions, easy money, and fleeting fame, the thinner the veil becomes between our world and the scorching abode of ruthless, fiery giants. The great desert, where Djinn once dwelled, has ceased to be merely a geographical location. Today, it has transformed into a terrifying metaphor for the spiritual emptiness of modern humanity. In this inner wasteland, unseen sandstorms rage, concealing within their depths the very same ancient demons. We no longer seek abandoned paths far from civilization. With our greed and pride, We ourselves build those very cursed crossroads right in the centers of our megacities, and at each such crossroads, ancient forces patiently await us, ready to strike a fatal bargain.
Concluding this chapter, it is important to realize a terrifying truth. Occult contracts made by mages in the distant past have no statute of limitations. Their terms are eternal, and the price for granted wishes is still exacted from the descendants of those who once dared to disturb the peace of the mighty Marids.
But let us return to where our journey began. Imagine a desolate night crossroads, covered in cold sand. The moon hides behind ragged clouds, and in the air, that same thick, metallic taste of impending doom hangs once more, making everything inside instinctively clench. A heavy and chilling realization dawns. The Marids have not disappeared. They did not vanish into the sands of time, nor transform into fairy tale characters. These spirits of fire have simply lurked in the deep shadows of our world, biding their time.
Far in the east, amidst forgotten ruins and shattered temples, the night wind still carries the echo of ancient Aramaic incantations. In these cursed places, the earth still bears the imprints of gigantic hooves, and the stones remember the unbearable heat of entities woven from smokeless flame. And remember, the great seal of King Suleiman, which once bound these demons, inexorably weakens with each passing century. Our blind skepticism acts like an acid, corroding the ancient copper, slowly but surely freeing this dark evil from its millennia-long captivity, restoring its former might. And as you watch this video, sitting safely somewhere on the other side of the world, at an abandoned desert crossroads, a madman is right now kneeling. With trembling hands, he draws a protective circle on the cooled sand, preparing to whisper his most cherished wish. Therefore, when deep in the night you suddenly hear a strange whisper, disguised as the mournful howl of the wind outside your window, by no means answer. Do not listen to these enchanting, otherworldly voices promising to fulfill everything you have ever secretly dreamed of. For if you succumb to temptation and utter even a single word, the ancient contract will be sealed, and then you will notice with horror how thick, bluish-gray smoke with the acrid scent of ozone is already slowly seeping through the keyhole into your dark room. The ancient Marid has appeared to claim its rightful payment for your most cherished wish. Now you are utterly alone with it, and no one will hear your scream. Ponder for a moment. What is it that you truly desire right now?